Hey everybody, welcome to episode 60 of the Is That Normal podcast, where we're excited about helping parents lead their teens and young adults toward Christ while hopefully keeping our sanity.
Right, which is not always easy, for sure. I know for me, we're raising teenagers. This year, actually, I guess last year technically, my first teenager became a 20-year-old, and I still got two teenagers. I got another one who's 12, and it is wonderful. I tell people all the time, I love this season of life, but it is a unique challenge, and every day we're having to kind of come back, my wife and I, and revisit, how do we navigate this and, and stay sane and stay on the same side and still have a relationship with our kids on the other side of this, so, it's a constant thing. And, and also, that coming from, we both have years of experience of dealing with teenagers and young people. I've been in youth ministry. We've talked about this, since the late 90s. You were a youth then, but you stayed right involved with us pretty much all the way through. And so we've been doing this for a long time. And so that leads me to ask this question, Randall. So why do you keep investing in young people?
Well, first and foremost, because I feel called to it. And, the reason I believe that I'm called to it is, I've shared, if you're a regular listener, I've shared bits and pieces before, but I know how having invested adults impacted my life and the trajectory of it. And I've also seen, over those years of ministry, how when adults invest in students and, take an interest in what's going on in their lives and really help try to set a good example and teach and mentor them, how big of an impact that can have on other lives as well. And but really that all boils down to, that's what I feel like my calling is.
Right. And I know for me, early on when I felt called to youth ministry, again, it was a calling when I stepped into that, but it was also a response, I think, to, I have had mentors. I had some early on, I had some in my late teen years that helped me grow spiritually, that were good influences, but there was also a gap for me in my high school years where I didn't have as much of that, and part of that's my fault, but coming out of that, I just really felt like this is something I can offer to young people so that maybe they can skip past some of the difficult parts, or at least I can help them navigate some of the difficult parts. And so what we're talking about here really is that there's a cause that has affected our actions. There's things in our life and our history, both our relationship with God and our own experiences, that caused us to feel like this is valuable, this is important, and I'm willing to invest in that. And so, today I want us to kind of talk, because it seems like everybody is looking for a cause to get behind right now. Everyone's looking for a flag to raise and something to get behind that's going to make them feel like they've done something significant. And so we want to help parents as they navigate that with the young people to find the right kind of causes.
So let's talk about causes. What is a cause?
That can be a lot of things, but really it goes back to that there's something, there's a need, there's a problem, there's an issue that I feel needs to be righted, or that I feel passionate about, and I'm going to buy the T-shirt, and I'm gonna go to the rallies, and I'm gonna make that something that I own, that is a part of who I am, a part of what drives me, is that I'm behind this, and there's I don't know, thousands, maybe millions of things that fit that description right now. And we've watched, I think particularly this year, as the more difficult and uncertain the world becomes, the more those are going to rise, and more people are going to look to grab and hold of something, because they're looking for something that's going to be an anchor for them, that's going to be an answer for them. So the causes really have filled a gap for that for some people.
Yeah. So how have you seen young people engage in causes, and maybe even how have you seen that maybe change over time?
Yeah. I think, again, some of the things of the last year haven't created new things as much as they've magnified things that were already happening. I'd say for a good 10 years or more, we really watched in our youth ministry, and even organizations that we were partnering with in youth ministry, realize that young people get invested, get excited, get engaged when there's a real need that we can hold up. And so yeah, I'd say over 10 years ago, we really started seeing that become a common culture with our high school and college age, that they were excited about water wells in Africa. They were excited about getting people out of slavery, which is a huge issue in our world. We don't see that as much. At least we don't feel like we see that as much here, but it's happening all over the world. Feeding hungry. So those kind of organizations started really growing, especially ones that were faith-based, because they could partner with the church, and kids would get behind that. And one of the things that we've seen just in the church culture as a whole is that as the generational shift is happening, you had 2 or 3 generations there that were very dutiful. They came and they gave to an institution. They supported the church. They were faithful. They did, they tithed to the church. They trusted the church to be the hub of deciding all of those causes and what we're going to do as far as ministry. But we're seeing younger generations be more likely to be inconsistent, at least in the way that they give to an organization or an institution, and more consistent in how they're going to support with their, not just their money, but their time and their energy to a cause that's going to help them feel like I'm making a real difference. Yeah.
And so, there's obviously benefits to that. What are some of the benefits?
Absolutely. If you get a teenager excited or off of their cell phone for 2 minutes, like, man,
that's
you've done something great, right? And so there's some leverages there, I think, that are healthy. That also, there are great needs in the world, and God has called us, Christ has called us to care for those that are poor and afflicted and homeless and familyless, and all of these things like that. We've been called to do that. A statement that's made actually in the Old Testament that's really profound to me is like, we're called to be a voice for the voiceless, like people who can't help themselves. We're supposed to help them. So that is a part of our journey of following God, is getting connected to those kind of things. So I think that's really important.
Yeah, and it does foster that idea of being involved in something that's bigger than just me.
Right. Yeah.
So what are some of the dangers? Because not every cause is the same, and not every cause is maybe what it appears to be on the outside. And
right, and we'll talk more about this in a minute, but yeah, you got to really evaluate, because there's lots of causes. We could name a dozen or so right now that popped up this year that are not healthy. That we do not want to see people get behind.
Absolutely.
And on top of that, there's a fickleness, I think, about causes. And even as much as it makes us think about something bigger than ourselves, it can also be really self-indulgent. I'm doing it for the wrong reasons, doing it because how it makes me feel, and you get a false sense of righteousness almost from those kind of things. So you have to be careful.
Yeah. So how do we evaluate those causes and try to help maybe filter through what maybe has redeeming value, and maybe some things that we should be a little more concerned about or stay away from? Right.
And even, as a church, as we've led teenagers through our youth ministry, and as I try to lead my own children, these are some of the big key questions. I would actually more say, like, there's questions that we need to ask as we get interested in something catches our attention. There's an issue that we feel like maybe we're passionate about. And, and it starts off with this question: is that biblical?
Yeah.
And I think that's just every decision in our life,
right.
Isn't it? Like we should go back to that. Like, is this really what God said that we should do? Does this line up with the other things God has told us about truth and life and the way things are supposed to work? And so, you've got to go back and say, the need may be legitimate, but if the approach to the need is not sound in what God would have us do, then there's probably another solution to that.
Absolutely.
So you have to talk through that, and you have to help your young people. Yeah, and again, maybe even delineate those things. It's like, I'm not saying that the cause is bad.
Right.
Well, I'm not saying that the need is wrong. I'm just saying the way they're approaching it, is that the best way to do that? So.
Yeah, and I think part of that is that, any cause that maybe a young person or whoever, whether that's us or whoever, want to get involved with, is do the research and make sure you really understand what the need is and how that need is being addressed by whatever cause it is that you're involved in.
Yeah, and I'll even, as I kind of share the next point, kind of piggyback off that, because another question I always ask is this sustainable? Is this something that we really can invest in for the long term? Is this going to be something that's going to continue to be viable for me to do and impacting the people I'm trying to help out for the long term? Or is this just a Band-Aid, or is this just a pick me up for myself? I feel like I gave a token, a statement that was made in a book that I read a long time ago, said, charity is not necessarily what we want, where we give to feel better and stay insulated from the issue. We need to figure out how do we get involved with that issue. And so we asked that question, but on top of that, we also have to evaluate, like you said, how well that organization, even if they proclaim to be a faith-based Christian organization, how well that they're really meeting that need. So one of the things we've led our young people to think through is like, you need to dig deep into this organization. How much of what you're giving is like administrative costs for this bureaucratic organization? How much of it's really getting to meet people's needs, and how are they meeting needs in a way that is going to help those people get out of a systemic problem? Or are we just putting a Band-Aid on, on a hemorrhage and not doing much good? And so one thing that we've done several times in several ways with our young people, and even in my family, is to sponsor a kid in another country. Like, so you pay, $30 or so a month, and that helps that child be able to attend a school that's a Christian-based school, get food, get resources, helps their family. Some of them, also help their families with occupational therapy, like trying to get them where they can have a job that's going to sustain their family. And so, and again, there's dozens of them out there. Some aren't Christian, and some are. And some of those that are Christian do a great job, and some of that are Christian, like, you're really, you're just throwing pennies in a bucket that has a hole in the bottom of it. So you really have to kind of dig through that, I think, with them. So, and then another question that we ask a lot is, does this fit into the scope of other things that our community is called to? And when I say community, that can mean a lot of things. I mean, I think that starts within your household, like the community of my household. Does this fit into what we are doing as a family? The community of my church. Does this fit in with other ministries and things that we're already investing as a church? And does this fit into the needs and the structure of the community, like the town I live in, the neighborhood I live in? Is this something that is going to complement things that God's already doing? That doesn't mean that sometimes God doesn't call individuals to go out and step out on faith and do something, out of the norm. And, I think, so that's not a no question, kind of question, like we're shutting you down kind of question. Sure. But it is a healthy thing to evaluate, because God usually, the way he works is he works through his word and he works through his people. And as he reveals the same thing to multiple people and that comes together, that's often where God's at work. And so yeah.
And as you said, that it's not a hard and fast rule as far as the fact that God does call people to step out. But we've seen instances where we've had, a young person come to us and they're really excited about a cause, and maybe it's, they've seen something with a specific organization or whatever that may be, and they're ready to, whether that's jump on a plane and go somewhere, or, try to raise money and invest in something. And, as we sit down and maybe talk about and say, okay, this is a great cause, but we also evaluate and see that cause and that need is present right here in our own community. And there are ways to get involved and, help that cause and serve that cause that has a direct impact on the people around us and the community that we live in. And so there's opportunities there that sometimes maybe, could easily get missed in the excitement of, things that we see or hear.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And like you said, very well said. And we've been on a learning curve as leaders from that, figuring out how to navigate that. But that's really where we've landed, is to say, let's try to evaluate that, bring that back. Is there that's a great cause or a great need, but is there a more sensible way that's going to impact things that we're already doing that you can get plugged into the same kind of thing? So that's been a really good process. And then, last question, and I think this is the hugest question to ask, is, does this flow from the original foundational source cause of life? and this is something that, we have to help ourselves as well as the people around us do all the time, is really going back to, like, what has God called me to do? Yeah. And we always have specific callings, but all of us as followers of Christ have a universal calling of what we're here to do, which is to spread the news about Jesus and what he's done for us and the hope that we have in Christ for the future. And that has to be the underlying foundational reason that we do everything in our life, and especially if we're getting involved in a cause, is how is that advancing that base cause that we're called to do.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, we're kind of working through that right now with our, on Wednesday nights with our high school ministry, and we're going through some stuff that the ministry Dare to Share had put out, called the Cause Circle. So give us a little insight on as to what that is.
Really a couple of big reasons why I wanted to have this episode this week is one, there's just so much noise going on in our society right now, and there's so many different causes people are getting excited or upset or frustrated about right now, and I just thought it'd be good for parents to have some tools to sit down and talk to their young people about what we're supposed to be behind, what we're supposed to be about. But the other reason is because I want to inform parents a little bit about what we're doing with the youth here in our church to help them talk through that as well. And so the Cause Circle comes from an organization called Dare to Share, which is for years, and we've partnered with them many times, has a heart to teach kids how to reach their friends for Christ. But this curriculum that we're using particularly talks about how do we become disciples, followers of Jesus, that make other disciples, and helping kids think through that process. And that, again, that's that base cause. That's, we can get excited about a lot of different things, and there's things that we'll do as an offshoot of this base cause, but we've got to get first and foremost this understanding that I'm supposed to take care of sharing the good news with the people around me and beyond that. So this Cause Circle, is 3 layers. It's that we begin with prayer for God to work in us, but also prayer for God to specifically work in the lives of people around us, and then for God to give us opportunities to share His truth with them. And then we talk about care, which is a lot of this cause stuff. Like, how do we get involved in the needs of the people around us? Yeah. Not just because it makes us feel good, but because as we meet needs, like Jesus met physical needs, it opens a door for us to then share. That's the third part of that cycle of why we are living the way we live, why we've decided to get involved in that. So my cause for my action is no longer because you had a need or because it makes me feel good to help you. It's because Christ helped me when He saved my life. And so I'm doing all this because I care about you and I want you to know that same hope that I have. And so trying to help kids gain that as kind of their perspective or their worldview on how they approach causes.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I kind of all that it boils down to the meaning of life, right? Like, Randall, I know there's several questions that you always get asked as a youth leader, like, can I get some food out of the kitchen? Like, that's a big one that we get asked all the time.
that's at the top of the list.
How far can I go with my girlfriend before it's a sin? That's another big question we've been asked a lot of times. That's another podcast.
Yeah.
But then the other one is like, what's the purpose? Like, what's the meaning of life? What's God's will for me? All this, some type of question like that. And really that's what this Cause Circle is all about. And for me, you can go super deep on this, but you boil it down really to what I would say just really 3 statements that God makes over and over again is that we're supposed to love God with all our heart. We're supposed to love others like ourselves, and we're supposed to make disciples. And that's what we're calling ourselves as well as young people to do that. So thought just kind of share maybe a few ways, kind of bring some practicals here for our parents as we kind of wrap this up. And these are things, Randall, we've talked about over and over again on this podcast. And it may sound redundant, but it's because we've got to build a rhythm of doing these things in every area. So again, in the area of causes, we need to pray for and with our young people. Yeah. Like, that is just essential. Pray for them. But then when they start asking questions about causes, that's a great time to say, hey, I'll pray with you. And can we pray right now that God would lead us in the right direction on how to get involved? I think that's very supportive. That's a very supportive way to approach that issue. We need to talk, but we also need to listen often. Like we need to be open to having that conversation, but we also need to listen to them. Why is this important to you? Why, we got to get that why question. Why is this need, caught your attention? Like, why do you think that we should do this or shouldn't? You just walk through that with them and let them kind of talk you through that.
Because it is really easy to want to jump in and, either solve problems or give answers. But sometimes in that listening, we may learn so much more about, like you're alluding to, is what's motivating them to be impassioned about a specific cause. And so we may learn things that we had no idea about them personally just through being able to sit and listen to the things that are important to them.
And we want to support that. We want to support passion and a movement towards doing the things God wants us to do. And and there's been times where God has used young people in my life to, more than one starts coming to me with the same thing on their heart. I need to stop and say, maybe God's trying to reveal something to all of us through these young people's hearts, so we shouldn't just ignore that or say that they can't have a fresh idea. We need to be good listeners, and sometimes God needs to move us through what he's moving in their lives. And then lastly, though, I think you just help put things in perspective by going through that cause principle that we shared. We got to go back to the base causes. We got to go back to, is it biblical? Is it sustainable? Does it fit, or could it fit better in the context of our community? And just not necessarily put water on their fire. Just help guide them to the wisest way to act on the causes that they're excited about.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we wrap up, our 2 takeaways for this week, the first one is just to talk through maybe some of the causes and things that your kids are interested in, and ask some of those questions and start those conversations, and be willing to get involved. And serving together is one of the core principles that we have to be doing.
Right.
And so the second is to join us in 2 weeks for our next podcast. And in the meantime, check out all of our social media platforms. We've got Instagram now, Facebook, YouTube. Am I forgetting anything?
That's it.
I think that's it.
And make sure you go to our website. All that's tied together at isthatnormal.org.
So we'll have some maybe pared down clips of some of our podcasts, but other supplemental content in the meantime, hopefully that will be relevant to you. So, all right, with that,
be abnormal.